colleagues since last week. The President will recall that in the budgets earlier passed by this honorable chamber, I've always mentioned too that budgeting in Nigeria has become an annual ritual that of course has not done the good to the greater majority of our people. Mr. President, now we are talking about the general principle. I think it is important that experience has shown to all of us that when we budget in this country, even though it's an intention that is based on our revenue and expenditure, we have not been able to draw a correlation between revenue and expenditure in this country. That, of course, we're able to put a balanced budget on the table that the greater majority of our people can benefit from. I want to say that again this year we have a budget of about 8.83 trillion that is on the table. We are used to dishing out very fat figures. And out of this 8.83 trillion, we have 4.04 trillion going for recurrent. This recurrent, of course, is going to go to personnel and overhead. Personnel costs in this country, of course, as we know, goes for salaries, emoluments for our workers that are in the neighborhood of about 4 million Nigerians. And then, of course, we have 2.03 trillion that is going for capital, which, of course, is going to provide social infrastructure, education, health, schools, and all other roads, and such like, that the greater majority of our people that are in excess of about 160 or 180 million people can benefit from. Then in which case, our budget is already skewed in such a way that the greater percentage of our budget that will benefit the greater majority of our people is not in place. Think of it, 2.03 trillion in a budget of 8.83 trillion. That is about a quarter, less than a quarter, which is less than 25%. So our budget that has to go for capital, we have known it that year in, year out, the execution of the capital component of our budget is almost impossible. The tail end of last year, we're still talking about 10% release for capital. A serious country, of course, must ensure that it has a lot of revenue in place to be able to meet with capital expenditure. Mr. President, we are going to pass this budget again. By the time we pass it, it's an intention, and we know it that the greater majority of our people that are supposed to benefit from our capital expenditure will not benefit from it. And the reason has always been that the MDAs that are supposed to be revenue bearing, that are supposed to put revenue in our consolidated revenue fund, from where budget is funded, certainly will not put the funds there. And the agencies of government that are revenue bearing do not even stand to get reprisals for their inactivity or for their inaction of any infraction that is committed by them. If you look at our constitution, Mr. President, and the Fiscal Responsibility Act itself, all these ones have provisions that are supposed to checkmate all of this. In fact, by the time we even pass budget, the Fiscal Responsibility Act has in place where we have budgetary execution and then, of course, achieving targets. Nothing is done. The Minister of Finance, after budget, is supposed to come up with a work plan, a cash flow plan that is supposed to tell us at intervals how we are going to meet our budget targets. Nothing is done. Again, even in that act, the Minister of Finance is supposed to appear before the finance committees, the joint committees of finance, in the Senate and House of Representatives, to explain how budgetary targets will be made. In this country, that is not done. So when we keep coming in here, keep talking about budget for this country, it only means administration exercise in futility. But because it's an annual ritual, and some of us too must devote some of our time because we represent are very responsible people in our different constituencies, there's the need for us to sing it even up to the update time, that there is the need for us to sit down in this country and ensure that what what touches the life of the ordinary Nigerian, which is our commonwealth, our common patrimony. We must take it with every element of seriousness. Now we are coming here. We are going to commit this budget now to the committee. Then we are going to start the whole exercise. The MDAs are not going to come early enough to come out and defend their budgets. And then, of course, they are going to be passing the buck of blame between the National Assembly and the executive. They are going to carry out their propaganda to say they were not passing the budget as I went due, when, of course, the head of the NDAs will refuse to come and defend their budget. And by the time we go through that and the budget is passed, the president, of course, is not going to release funds. We are all going to be going around the same circle. So having to come in here, Mr. President, we are going to be talking of cashback releases. We in appropriation committee will keep calling them. How much do you have in the kitty? How much have you released? It's not the exclusive preserve of the Minister of Finance to release whatever he or she wants to release. And the one is that of budget will not even come to explain anything. Every now and then, today as we speak, they are still going on the 2016 budget. Capital projects are still going on. 2017 capital projects are still going on. Capital project for 2018, nothing has happened. Now we are considering 2019 budget. Mr. President, you can see that this whole exercise that we're going through, let us get more serious. With due respect to the National Assembly, particularly to the Senate, that I belong, we have worked so hard. We come in here to consider our budgets. But by the time it gets to the point of implementation, the thing is dumped. So we need to be reassured that this exercise that we are engaged in, we are going to get releases. Section 88(1) of the Constitution is very clear. BI(2) is very clear. We have a right to ask how much is released for each line item in the budget. We have a right. But I think, Mr. President, please let us convey this message to the executive, that by the time we commit this thing to the committee, all the head of MDAs will come promptly to come and defend their budgets. Before they start putting it on the board, that Senator Bukola Saraki is responsible for not passing the budget. The ministers must come. The chief executives of commissions and other agents of government must come here. And the minister, by the time we pass it, they must be ready that all MDAs too must bring in all their resources by way of revenue into the coffers of government. The considered revenue fund must have the funds to, of course, execute the budget. Overhead, Mr. President, let me tell you, overhead releases in this country is supposed to be responsible for the day-to-day running of the MDAs. If you go to the federal secretariat here, many of them will not have diesel to operate their lifts. So you can find that the offices are open seasonally. Yet we pass budget. They will tell you they don't have money to fuel vehicles to run errands that can, of course, improve the efficiency of government. So if we are going to get these overhead releases that will come once in a while, what is the use? So you can see that overhead releases is as jaundiced as capital releases. So, Mr. President, I think we should be more serious in this country. The executive must see to it that it is their responsibility. By the time appropriation is carried out, that they too must see to it that the monies that have been appropriated are so used, because it's already an act, it's already a law. A violation of it, of course, is an infraction of the Constitution. When we come up here to come and ask for consequences for those who will violate the provision of this Constitution, people will go and lay siege and be throwing stones and removing cars at airports when they will not allow this country to work. So, Mr. President, please, I want to crave the indulgence of this Senate that if we must pass this budget this year, let us be born again in executing our budget. Let us know it, that there is action after budget is passed, and that action is how to implement the budget and how to meet our targets. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.